Hey everybody, Erin from the Impatient Gardener. Whew, it's been a whirlwind kind of weekend, but I do want to bring you a Q&A. But before we roll, first of all, it's going to be another multitasking Q&A because I also really need to work in the garden. And I thought, I think I'm able to answer questions and work in the garden at the same time. We will see if I can stay on track for that. But I wanted to just give you a couple little updates on various things very quickly. Well, first up, here's the banana. Growth continues to push out. Seems happy, I guess. So anyway, that's the banana update, exactly 1 week since you saw me butcher it. Here's the next update. All of the dahlias have been moved. They currently have their very own temporary greenhouse. Most things are sprouting now. There's a few things that have been slow, but I moved everything out here just because it was too cool in the basement, and it's much warmer out here now. In fact, our nights are just fine. I'm not even worried about running the nighttime temperatures, at least for the foreseeable future. Some things are really ahead, like this is Crichton honey. They are way ahead of everything else. Some things like Waltzing Matilda, which if there's really one dahlia that I want to do well this year, it's Waltzing Matilda. And I see nothing yet on these. They all had sprouts when like tiny little swollen eyes, so I know they'll come. It's just, boy, Waltzing Matilda is being slow. Anyway, that is the dahlias. Next up, for a person who is all done with roses, I sure seem to be talking a lot about roses. Here is the climbing rose. You might notice that it looks different. Now, I've had autumn sunset rose growing up this trellis on the front of the house for, I bet it's 7 years. I mean, it's a long time that's been growing up here. And you know that I've struggled, well, maybe you don't, but I have struggled with cane hardiness on it. Root hardiness, no problem. Cane hardiness has been a bit of a struggle. A couple of years ago, I wrapped it in a big frost blanket, and that worked perfectly. This year, I also wrapped it in a big frost blanket, but I didn't do that until after we got what was, at least to me, a rather unexpected, very, very cold spell. So I didn't really wrap that until January, but I think it was late November, we got like a super, super cold spell. And then it warmed up again. So it wasn't until it was getting cold again that I wrapped it. I think it got zapped on that first one because most of the canes were dead. And so I just made the executive decision that since I've been toying with this idea for a while, that I was all done with that, because I don't really want to have to wrap roses, climbing roses. I just want a cane hardy rose without having to do all that. So I bought a new rose. I bought Above and Beyond. This is the climbing rose that I've been thinking about growing, and a lot of people have recommended to me for quite some time. And I finally just decided that even though the Autumn Sunset Rose had nice, fresh new growth coming from the base, I thought, that's it. I'm all done protecting canes on roses. You guys know I'm taking kind of a tough stance on roses this year. And, oh my, loud bird. I just decided I'm all done putting up with that. So it's actually, it's a really nice, healthy, mature plant. I think it'll do well here, by the way. This is the clematis. I need to sort of pin that guy up. I think that's Pearl de Azur. Got a few of them growing there. This is Rise Up Amberness, Proven Winners climbing rose. Was new last year. The cane did not live for that either, so this is all fresh new growth, but it looks quite healthy. I'm not surprised at that cane, and especially on a new plant, I'm not surprised the cane wasn't hardy at all. Here's the other thing that's going on. You might notice that there's a lot of plants starting to accumulate on the patio. This gets me stressed out. I do not like plants just sitting around. I enjoy planting. The only reason these are sitting here is because I haven't gotten to the garden that these are going in yet. And when I say haven't gotten to the garden that these are going in yet, I mean I haven't even done winter cleanup there yet. So that's the garden that I'm gonna go work in right now. I'm also in the middle of cooking ribs. I just got done making a birthday cake for my sister-in-law. I think I might be multitasking too much, but let's just keep it going. And I'll see if I can answer your questions while I work in that garden. Let me go grab my stuff. So I'm gonna be working over there by the road, but I did just wanna show you this part of the garden because actually it's looking really pretty. All the daffodils are blooming. There's quite a mix in here. I think some are that I had planned, some are from before I had made this garden. I don't know, it just looks really nice. You'll notice, maybe you'll notice that there is a new tree here. This is a big apple dogwood. That's Cornucosa Big Apple. I saw this tree when I went to the coastal Maine Botanical Garden in October, and I got obsessed with it and I found it. The serviceberry was having some issues. One, it had cedar apple rust. Two, there was some pretty bad buck rub on it from the deer on its bark. We actually moved it and we're gonna try to nurse it back to health. But ultimately, I kind of decided I wanted this tree here instead. So it's got a bit of growing to do. I think hopefully it'll like it here. It's a moist but well-draining site. And I think this is sort of dappled shade. It's very hard for me to tell because in spring it's very hard to judge how much light there is. But I've been watching it today when the sun's been out. And right about now is when it's going to start getting a fair amount of sun. But when I say right about now, I mean at like 5 o'clock at night. And even though all the trees over there were cut down, there are trees right across from us here that once they leaf out should provide some shade. That's the good looking part. Let's look at the mess down here before I start answering questions. I would like to manage everything from this blue shag pine over there on this side. I would like to do both, but both of these two beds are getting a lot of those plants you saw on the patio. There are a few bad actors here that I have to deal with. Well, I do see a lot of dandelions, but I don't even count those as bad actors. Garlic mustard weed, this is just like a maintenance thing at this point. Through many years of diligent pulling of garlic mustard weed, it's mostly under control, but you do have to keep up on it, otherwise it's gone. Do have some ostrich ferns in here, which are not great, but they're kind of pretty in spring. I just keep with those, if I don't dig them out, I'll just keep breaking off the foliage to keep them weak. Canada thistle, huge problem. It's all over the garden. I've talked about it before. I'll talk about management strategies somewhere else, but at this time I am pulling it. It will come back. That is not going to get rid of it, but it is how I'm managing it now. But we'll talk about management strategies for that in another video. And then the other thing in here is Canadian goldenrod. A lot of that this year. Also from the sort of unmanaged situation that we have going on nearby. So those are the bad actors. I also see some what I think is stinging nettle in there. Those things, not the stinging nettle, but the other things I just mentioned, will go in a separate bin and those get thrown away. Everything else, the regular weeds and the winter refuse, can just go in the wheelbarrow and I'll put them in our pile. I expect this will be one of the more unflattering videos I ever make of myself, but I'm not going to be looking at the camera a lot while I answer, but let me get to the questions and we'll ask the first question and then I can start working. Okay, so we did there was a bunch of videos I'm pulling questions from, including the last Q&A and then the videos I did last week. And I actually can't remember which question goes with which, but they're more general gardening questions. So while I generally garden, turn this down because I'm going to be working over there, I will generally answer. Okay, first question is from Melissa, who says, how do you trim your boxwoods to get that perfect sphere in those gray pots we can see in this video? She says, I have mine in pots, I trim the tops and still have a boxwood that looks like they have a haircut just on top. So those are the boxwoods that are in the circle garden there. What I would say is that first of all, those are green velvets. So it's important to start with a boxwood variety that has, that habit, because there are some, I think Green Mountain is one of them, that sort of want to grow more upright. So start with one that has a rounded habit to begin with. And then in terms of pruning them, I just always prune a little bit. I don't ever do, mostly, by the way, I prune my boxwoods. Usually it seems like the end of May. I do it after they finish their first big flush of growth. And that's usually the only time I prune them, unless I'm having like a garden tour towards the end of summer and I feel the need to clean things up a little bit. Then I will kind of nip them. But I just use a hand shears and I just prune them. I do prune the sides under a bit, even though you're not really supposed to do that. But I do. Okay, so the next question is, how do I keep my ajuga from taking over the garden? I think ajuga's inclination to take over the world depends very much on where you live. So in my area, it just doesn't. Some people have horrible problems with it creeping into the grass. I mean, I would, you know, keep a nice, good edge on your garden and that won't happen. It's not a problem for me here. So I don't know how to really answer that because it's just not something that I deal with. I also grow 2 varieties that I think are less prone to being invasive, which is chocolate chip and black scallop. Those are my 2 favorites. And I think both of those are perhaps a little bit well-mannered, more well-mannered than some other ones. The next question after that, and I'm sorry I'm not getting people's names this time, was in the banana video. And someone said, how much did that banana cost? They said, you know, after all this work, I can't see how, if it's not super expensive, how is it even worth the trouble to do this? I thought I had addressed that in the video, but maybe I didn't. Sometimes I edit things out and I can't remember if I left it in the video or not. But I think I paid $40 for that banana last year. And this year I went to the same place, by the way, and they had bananas that were twice the size of what I had last year. And they were $45, and I thought that was the deal of the century. So the answer to the question is, it's totally a deal. And I would happily pay that every year and not have to worry about, you know, anything else. I think I got my money's worth and then some out of that banana, even if it didn't make it through winter. So I actually don't think that was that much work. I mean, I would have had to get it out of the pot and wrestle it out of the pot regardless of whether I was keeping it or not. So that's no more work. And then I stuck it in the basement and I didn't look at it. And then I brought it out and then spent maybe 20 minutes, half an hour chopping away at it. And that was it. So, I mean, I guess the starting process is probably not going to be that much fun having that sitting around my house. But that's about the only negative I can see. But again, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to see if I can do it. And since things are looking good, I have, you know, I feel like I guess I can. Also, I want to see what it does the second year. I mean, is it going to grow like that much bigger? So I'm interested to follow this thing and see how well it does. See what happens next. So anyway, it's not always about the money. Okay, next question. I haven't been on a garden tour in probably 2 decades simply because I grew tired of seeing the same plants over and over again. And they're great plants. Many of them I have in my garden, but it's so nice to see something unusual and something that leaves you clueless. My heart started beating faster when I saw the Diananth cerulean, completely new to me. So I'm so glad. I love that comment because that's how I feel. You know, there's these plants that we have grown to know and love are fabulous plants. But, you know, it is nice to see something else and to try something else. And, you know, I don't know. This is a personality. This is a character flaw for me, which is that I go beyond what is reasonable to be different from other people. So if I see something that I really like, if I'm inspired by something I see in a garden, I will never take that exact thing and do the exact same thing. I have to put my own spin on it. It's just, I don't know, it's just how I'm programmed. I'm not saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting inspiration from something you see and then doing the exact same thing. I don't think there's anything at all wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's not who I am. So sometimes when I see a lot of people talking about the same plants, like, it makes me less interested in growing that plant simply because I just don't want my garden to look like anyone else's. And again, that's totally me. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I love Sissinghurst and I want to make my garden look just like Sissinghurst or any other garden in the world. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. It's just not how I approach really anything in my life. So it's not just gardening, it's literally everything. Okay, the next question was about pine bark fines. Somebody said they're in my zone, but they wanted a link. Well, there is no link for pine bark fines. It would be ridiculous to try to order something like that online. You just got to buy that stuff. You got to buy that stuff locally. You shouldn't have a problem finding pine bark fines. It's just that some places may not call them that. So what you want to look for is like a pine bark mulch, and then take a peek at the bag or ask somebody to open up the bag for you. And make sure that it's, just make sure that it's really fine. You want tiny little chips. At least if you're, I just think that works the best. Certainly if you're going to be mixing it in, as a soil amendment, you can obviously go for a bigger chip if you want it in your garden, but I like those fines, so that's what I go for. So the only reason I'm raking is because I can't see really what I'm working with otherwise. I don't mind all this dried stuff sitting in there. It's fine with me. It's mulch, but I just can't see what I'm doing. Okay, so Thomas says, is it normal for a clematis to sit and take a long time establishing? I planted a group 3 clematis last spring. It did absolutely nothing all summer. No foliage growth, but also no signs of struggle. Is that common? I've never had a plant take so long to establish a root system. I will say that's a little unusual, but it depends what it looked like when you got it. I mean, I've gotten bare root clematis before. They're tiny little things. Or seen some that are sold in nurseries that when you take them out of the pot, there's just nothing there. And I would say in that case, if it's not struggling, consider that good. So it's possible. It is a little unusual. I would say, hopefully by now, regardless of where you are, you should be seeing signs of growth. You should be seeing buds on those canes. And if you're not, then it's probably a goner or close to it. But if you do, then it probably was just sitting there trying to get its feet going. I do love these gloves, but they're not touch responsive, and it's really problematic. Mariana asked if I have a video that shows how I do drip tubing or irrigation in the flower beds, and she said she's scared to do it. I don't, and I'll tell you why. Because the only place I have drip irrigation is in the vegetable garden, and then in that skinny garden along the south side of the house there. And those are the only 2 places where I even have drip. The one alongside the house is super easy. I just bought the 1/2-inch drip tubing with emitters every 9 inches or whatever. Bought the fittings to hook it straight into the hose spigot with a splitter. The one in the vegetable garden is significantly more complicated than that because it's all zones and everything. And I didn't make a video when we were doing that because it was my first time hooking up drip irrigation, and I was scared to do it too. So I didn't want to make a video and then risk sharing bad information. So I did not make a video then. We did run a lot of stuff underground. I would say one of the things that helped me was I went to a company called, I think it's called Dripworks, and they had on their website like a bunch of examples of drip setups. And what I did was I basically just based it off of that and then expanded it, to match what I was. So over here is where I've put down shredded leaves, and hopefully you can see how many fewer weeds there are where I put down shredded leaves in fall. They really do make a difference in terms of managing weeds and just feeding your soil. This mess over here is where I cut down Millennia Transparent. I have 3 planted there. 2 need to move. It's too crowded, but I just chopped and dropped that, and so the big mess is left there. That's what you're looking at there. So Tito's Revenge says, Proven Winters has a false hydrangea called Flirty Girl. I bought one this year, and it's already one of my favorite plants in my little yard. The foliage is really pleasant so far, and I'm excited for its blooms. So here we go again with the common names, and I did use that. So Flirty Girl is false hydrangea vine. Hang on, let me get the botanical name for it so we can figure what that is. Okay, so Flirty Girl is false hydrangea vine. So climbing hydrangea is Hydrangea petiolaris. False hydrangea vine is Schizophragma hydrangeoides. So totally different from what I planted. So what I planted is an herbaceous perennial. That's a climbing vine. So that is false hydrangea vine. I planted false hydrangea. This is just why we shouldn't really be using common names, because those two plants have nothing to do with each other, at least as far as I'm aware. So it just adds unnecessary confusion. So that's what that is about. Oh, somebody said, now I feel bad about the lady's mantle. So when I was planting that clematis, like a little chunk of lady's mantle popped up. I'm like 99% sure I stuck that back in the ground, but even if I didn't, there's a lot of lady's mantle over there. Oh, Terry says, do you start your caladiums indoors? And I'm assuming that comes from because I said that I plant caladiums in that fire pit, which, by the way, that fire pit does have holes drilled in the bottom of it for drainage. Somebody mentioned it that would be perfect for succulents, and it would be, but I will never have that many succulents. I don't do great with succulents, and like, they're so expensive, aren't they? I mean, I feel like they're really expensive, but maybe but I also spend a lot on other plants. So maybe it's just where my plant priorities lie. Anyway, you got to have drainage for whatever. So there's a ton of holes drilled in the bottom of that fire pit, but that was not the question. The question was, oh, caladiums. So with caladiums, I typically get bulbs, and it all depends on when they come. So if they come early enough for me to start them indoors, I will do that. But like this year, I haven't gotten them yet, and I feel like it's probably too late to start them indoors. So I will just hold on to them and then plant them directly into that planter. At that point, you do have to wait quite a long time. They're probably one of the most cold sensitive bulbs that's out there. So you do have to be really, here, I'll just show you what I just pulled out. This is the dreaded creeping bellflower. Worse than all the other vines that I mentioned, or all the other weeds that I mentioned. So usually I plant them directly into there because it's just too late for them to even get going. And I think once you've put them somewhere, you're sort of committed to get growth out of them before you move them on. So if I started them indoors, I would be committed to waiting till they have a certain amount of growth before I transplant them out. And I do get really bad about tending to indoor plants at this time of year, just because it's so busy in the garden. So it's really better for everybody involved if I just plant them straight out. Okay, so that's all the questions I grabbed. It feels like that wasn't very many, and there should be more, but maybe it's because I'm not paying attention. I'm gonna continue gardening here for a little bit, and then once I'm done with that, done for the day, we will meet back for postcards. So hang on, postcards are coming in a second. I bet you thought I was going to come back with a cocktail. I was hoping to. It's obviously the next morning. We're on to coffee now. We've moved through several beverages since I came back. Yeah, so I would say I got about halfway through that bed. What I need to do is the sloping part, which is obviously the worst part, which is just full of grass. And for the life of me, I don't understand how it got there. My only theory is that grass seed came down the creek and embedded in there. I don't know how else, creek. I don't know how else that would have happened, but it's shocking to me how many plants that I planted there are no longer there. I would say when I originally planted that bed in 2020, I put in a lot of Spirobolus plugs. Now they were the tiny plugs. They weren't like the landscape plugs, which tend to be like 2 inches wide and like maybe 4 inches deep. These were like 1-inch plugs. They were really meant for plugs that you would pot on and grow on, and I just stuck them straight in. No, that didn't work. So I lost a ton of plants over there. You know, that all comes from basically 1 year of neglect. It was not on the priority list last year as I was working on Roy's garden and that other garden, and it just sort of got left behind. And I think those first few years after you plant a new garden, the maintenance is more important during those first few years, when everything during the formative years, than any other time. And I think that garden is proof of what happens if, so 2021, it was great. 2022, 1 year, 2 years after it was planted. And I'm not saying I'm starting over in there, but there's a lot of empty spaces. Okay. Also interesting to note what didn't come back. And one of the things that I don't think came back, and I knew it wasn't going to come back, was the new Agastaches by Proven Winners. There's a really pretty one. I'll put the name up on the screen here. It's an orange one, or kind of a tangerine color one. Beautiful. And those, I mean, Agastaches are questionably hardy for us here in Zone 5. Blue Fortune did well and does well, though I have killed that one before, but some of these other ones, especially the newer colored ones, hardiness is super questionable, and that did not come back. So I suspected that would be the case. All right. I am strategically planting myself here because I don't know if you're gonna be able to see over my shoulder the bird feeder. It might be too small for you to see anything that's going on over there, but all the orioles and all the migratory birds showed up 3 days ago. So we've got Baltimore orioles, orchard orioles. We've got 3 woodpeckers. We've got the red-bellied woodpecker, which is here all the time, the downy woodpecker, which we see all the time, and now the red-headed woodpecker is here. Now, both the red-bellied woodpecker and the red-headed woodpecker have red heads, and neither one of them has a red belly, but the red-headed woodpecker is very easily identified because the head is like burgundy, and it's all white or black feathers beyond that. We've got the grosbeaks are here. The only ones we haven't seen from our sort of usual migratory friends is no indigo bunting, although our goldfinch population seems to be way down this year, and they've turned gold now, so it's not like we're mistaken for something else. We used to have oodles of finches. I don't know where they are. We unfortunately have picked up a ton of red-winged blackbirds, which I was told is probably because all the tree clearing across the way. And again, I crap about this tree clearing all the time, and I do not blame those homeowners. It was acres and acres and acres of dead ash trees, and I don't blame them for wanting to clean at least some of those out. So what happened is suddenly, like, a big part of the sort of the environment around here went from kind of woodsy to almost a little prairie-ish, and I think that's why we're now starting to see red-winged blackbirds at the feeders. So there's I don't know if you can see it right now. There's a red-headed woodpecker there right now. Anyway, we've got our oranges out, and the bird, it's been great. Let's do some postcards. These first 2 were sent a while ago. They actually were sent to a different address, not these people's fault at all. I had the wrong address. It gets to me. It's just not the one that we check as often. And just took me a little bit to get them home. Not these people's fault at all. I put the wrong address in that video, I think. So let's go through these 2 first. Okay, this is from the Dallas Arboretum. This was actually written on March 27th, so that's how old this is. I'm very sorry. This is from Susan Bingham. Okay, so, hi Erin. In all my life, 67 years, I had no idea this gorgeous place existed till last year. We live 3 hours away, but I got a membership today so we can visit often. That is gorgeous. And sometimes the postcards identify, I see some, this is Cleome right here. It kind of looks like ageratum in the front, and then the tall blue in the back is salvia. But anyway, it's absolutely gorgeous. Hi, Erin. Thanks for introducing us to Nawaki Tools. Traveling in Japan now, of course, I had to check out the Nawaki store in Tokyo. Got myself a GR Pro Barracuda clippers. I have that one, I think. Yes, I do. And I do love those Nawaki tools. Can't wait to try them out. I garden in northeastern Illinois, same zone as you. Cherry blossoms are just about to pop. Unfortunately, we leave for home in 2 days. Keep up your great posting. So this is from, I think this is from, yeah, it's from Japan. Mailed via airmail, and because you know I like stamps, there's a beautiful stamp on there. Thank you so much for taking the time to send that. And I am so sorry that you missed the cherry blossoms, and I am so sorry that it took me so long to read that. This one is coming from Indianapolis. All right, no picture to show here, but hello, I just had to send a note of thanks. You had so much to my days. Thank you so much. You said the English museums, I think I said museums. Oh, English nurseries are so much better than ours because they have cake. I laughed so much. They have cakes and tea. I was agreeing with you and thinking bags of grit in my head, and then you said cake, a deep needed belly laugh. If you guys watch any British gardening shows, they're constantly adding grit to the top of pots, into soil. They're constantly talking about grit. And if you go to a garden center here and ask for grit, they are going to look at you sideways. What you can use as grit and what is grit is go to a feed store and ask for chicken starter grit. Same thing, basically, and works perfectly. And I have used it for exactly those reasons, and cheap. So refreshing and enjoy the garden. You bring so many new to me plants to my attention. Great stuff. Hope to encourage you to keep going. Delightful and such education. This is from Missy in Indiana. Thank you. Oh, here's from the, okay, I get the chance to pronounce it right this time, Skagit Tulip Festival. Thank you for correcting me on the pronunciation of Skagit, everyone. Okay, not officially a garden, but the Rosengard Tulip Farm was spectacular. If you have a chance to go to Skagit Valley in April, check it out. They have dahlias in the fall. Love your content. This is from Ginny. Thank you so much, Ginny. Ginny has impeccable penmanship here. Look at that beautiful card. I would like to go see tulips. I'm really disappointed with the tulip situation here again this year. Wildflowers of the Rockies. Hi, Erin. We visit our granddaughter who is working in Vail, Colorado. Very beautiful. These beauties weren't blooming yet, of course, but I can only imagine how lovely they will be really soon. Enjoy your videos so much. This is from Jean in Illinois. Thank you, Jean, for sending it. The description on this postcard is there are a profusion of colorful and unusual flowers that grow wild throughout the Rockies. Two of the most abundant are the columbine and Indian paintbrush. Indian paintbrush on the bottom there. Okay, there's lots of material in here, but let me read the note first. Hi, Erin, love your videos. As you requested, suggestions for visiting gardens in your travels. If you can ever make it down to South Louisiana, Longuevue Gardens is beautiful. We visited Huma's house and gardens often, but I don't have a postcard. It's one of our favorite places. The carriage house is delicious. Make a reservation online. There are very pretty accommodations on the property. Huma's house is on River Road in Burside, Louisiana. I promise you won't be disappointed. Is everyone taking notes? Longview is right at the outskirts of New Orleans, and not far away is the Paris Line Bistro for lunch. Nearby is City Park Botanical Gardens. Ralph's on the park for lunch. Have a cocktail at the Turtle Bay at Huma's house. This is from Bridget. Bridget just planned our trip for us, everybody. Here are some postcards that she sent along. This is the East Lawn. This is at Longuevue House and Garden. This is summer snow roses line the terrace, and Lady Banksia and Cherokee roses bloom against the east facade of Longuevue. Am I pronouncing that right? Undoubtedly no. Here's another one. Portico Garden in Spanish Court, the formal English portico garden featuring a boxwood parterre garden with variety of roses and camellias, provides a vista to the Spanish Court, which was inspired by the general life and other gardens of Alhambra in Granada, Spain. And then she also sent the brochure from the self-guided tour of Longuevue. And I always love these maps that are in these. Thank you so much for sending that, Bridget. That was amazing. Okay, if you are going to a garden, you want to share some garden inspiration. And again, this could be a garden you visited. This could be, you know, something you saw in a local garden tour, whatever. We're all just sharing the inspiration here. So send in your postcards, address, the correct one, in the description below. It's the P.O. Box 99 one. And the birds, well, they're up in the tree. There's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, thank you for joining me on this long and rambling video. You guys all seem to really like the doing something while we do the Q&A. I'm not sure if that worked as well this time because maybe I don't multitask quite as well as I thought I did, and I feel like I didn't answer enough questions. We'll work on that for next time, and I mean, it's a good thing to multitask anyway. It is, as you can see, where it's like 7:30 in the morning right now. You can see it's a super overcast day. I think we're getting rain today. It's a little chilly, but it should warm up. But this kind of weather is perfect for getting seedlings outside for hardening off. Now I will put them in the greenhouses, which are over there, so that they aren't totally trashed by rain, and they do have some temperature protection. but I am moving a lot more seedlings. So we're not dipping down below 45 at night this week, they claim. So I'm moving a lot of stuff out to the greenhouse just because things are going to grow better there. It's warmer out there during the day than it is in my basement. And it starts the hardening off process. And even though they are under really good lights down there, it's just better for them to be outside. Natural light is so much better. So we're working on moving things out of the basement, which is always a good thing. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Appreciate you hanging in there with me on this one. See you soon.